This is Damian Macy of the Friends of the Marshall Public Library, and this is July the 21st of 2015. And I'm at the library meeting room with Diana Nicholson. She did not grow up in Marshall, but she's had a number of years here too, and has been a citizen of our community for a long time. And with that, we're going to turn it over. I'll introduce you to Diana.
I was born in 1948 in Bloomington, Illinois. My parents were Willis and Helen Simpson. My father came to Marshall to pastor a church after having lived in Chicago, Freeport, Saybrook, then Marshall, and lastly Springfield. Then Daddy did move back to Marshall after we lost my mother in the 80s. I've lived here on and off since I was 9 years old. I did leave for an extended period of 1964 to 1966. So the 2 years that I was not here, I spent 1 year in Springfield and 1 year in Newton, and came right back to Marshall. What was my neighborhood like? Oh gosh, lots of good memories. There were probably 25 kids that lived within a 2-block radius. Our favorite thing to do was ride our bicycles to Drake's Locker, which was down by the bowling alley, and they always had fudgesicles and dreamsicles, and I remember begging for money so I could go to Drake's Locker. Our neighborhood was full of fun. We would play baseball, we'd play basketball. Benny Johnson, Howie Johnson were in my neighborhood, whom Howie became pretty popular basketball player even in college. It was a loving neighborhood. All the parents looked out for all of us. If we were playing in one yard, there'd be somebody there to break up the feuds and fights. It was just a good upbringing.
What neighborhood, or what was the address of that neighborhood?
I lived at 607 Chestnut Street. That's catty-cornered from Catholic Church. And we lived in the parsonage, right behind the church that Daddy pastored. And Henderson's bait shop was in our neighborhood, and the most popular stop, though, was definitely Drake's. We'd ride our bicycles down to, by the railroad track. They sold feed and might have been Clark County Farm.
Clark Service?
Clark Service Company. Okay. Evelyn O'Rourke worked there forever and ever and ever, and she kept candy and chewing gum in her drawer, and so we would hit there, not frequently like we did Drake's, but we hit Evelyn up at least once a week for candy and gum and good stuff. Then in our neighborhood, of course, the bowling alley was built. And about that time, Ida Athey and her family lived on that street, which added another 5 or 6 kids probably. I also remember where Newberry's Coal was. We didn't stop in there so much, but I do remember that building, and it was so strange when that all changed. When the Y was gone and Newberry's was gone. Same with the feed store. Used to be on 5th Street. And we'd go in there and there'd be farmers and chickens and eggs and, you know, just...
You mentioned Ida Athey, and I'm going to go back, and you might mention her maiden name, which people around here would know her by.
She was Ida Smitley Athey. And they were really noted in our community for everything. If you wanted anything, go to Athey's, from a place to sleep to food to whatever. Ida's door was always open, and she was a real plus in our neighborhood.
Granny liked to cook too, as I recall.
Yes, very
Granny
much.
Smitley.
Always cookies and pies and good stuff. Another place we went, now he didn't let us in because he didn't want us to get burned, was the welding shop. Sweets welding shop. And we'd ride our bicycles. There used to be a store on the corner there across from the jail where we'd buy penny candy. Cormant or...
Now, the one I'm thinking about was Walter Volker's. Had a store in his house for a while.
That might have been it. I just remember that, buying penny candy.
But that was there.
We're going back. But Roy would never let us in when he was welding, but we loved to watch the sparks, you know, fly. It didn't take much to amuse us back in the day. Then Darrell Harlow had a store that sold penny candy down south on Route 1. And I remember, of course, going to the Dog and Suds and buying root beer for a nickel, a mug. Those are the most outstanding memories. I think my favorite teacher would have been Myrtle Shade.
Oh, yes.
I loved her. Then, of course, as I grew older, you get out of having favorite teachers. But in grade school, she was my favorite.
Do you recall what grade that was when she taught?
4th grade. 5th grade was Mrs. Fraker, and 6th grade was Dale Davis, before he was a principal.
My mother taught at Martinsville, and there was a consolidated school north of town where she taught, and she taught for a number of years with Myrtle Shade out there.
Isn't that amazing? You forget how things were, you forget the people that were here. Now on the main strip, a favorite place the bicycle gang liked was Davis's Bakery, which was here for a short time, but we sure got our fill of Jim and Madge's donuts. They were wonderful people. Went to school pretty much here from the 4th grade to my sophomore year of high school. Let's see, then I moved to Springfield, took a year, my junior year there, and my senior year was Newton, Illinois. And after I graduated, then I came back and started working for Doris. Oh gosh, what would her name have been? Doris Burkhart?
Burkhart.
I guess. Yeah. And she used to be in the St. James Hotel. Her beauty shop used to be there. And I used to ride my bicycle up there and sit on the towel hamper and watch her do hair. I was fascinated.
Is that kind of what inspired you to go into the business?
It sure is. It sure is. I thought I would love to do this one day, so in 1966 she took me on as an apprentice. And that program took, I believe, a year to complete, and I got my license in 1967, 68 in that year. and have been licensed hairdresser ever since then. Of course, then when I came back, I met my husband. I was walking home from school one day, and I was right in front of the Catholic church, and he stopped and said, "Do you want to ride home?" And I said, "No, I don't think so. For one thing, I'm only a block away, and the second thing, I don't know you." Well, he said, "Your mom does. She worked for Sam Deal in the dentist's office, and she had known Leon a lot longer probably than I did." So that was the start. He took my phone number, and we started dating and lived happily ever after.
And his full name is?
Diana Nicholson. I would put Theron, but he'd kill me. It's really Theron, but he doesn't use it. He's simply Leon. Pastime and leisure after we married. The first year we were married, I got my first motorcycle. That would have been in 68 probably, because we were married. We've been married since 1966. Started riding a motorcycle, got my husband into it, and then we both rode for several years before we had kids. And that kind of put the skids on.
What was your most memorable trip on the cycle?
I would have to say probably the Chattanooga Mountains. I don't know. I was scared to death, I know that. Never wanted to take a big long ride again. That was very memorable, and it was beautiful, beautiful riding through there.
Do you recall what time of year that might have been?
Oh, it was hotter than Billy Bob. Probably August, late August.
So it'd been milder weather then.
Yes, yeah. We didn't run in. You're not initiated on a motorcycle till you're caught in a downpour, and I did that right south, Robinson. I rode from Robinson on in pouring rain. But no, we had real good weather. We were gone probably about 8 days, I would say.
Now, did you have two cycles?
We had two cycles. I started out on a Bridgestone 90cc.
Bridgestone?
Bridgestone, as in tires. I know that's weird. But back then they made them. Had a 90cc, then I went to a 180cc, to a 350cc, to 1200cc. Yeah. Kept just, kind of gradually. And this is a great town to be around on a motorcycle. Everybody pretty well looks out for you, and you look out for them, and it's a real safe environment. I've always enjoyed riding my motorcycle. The state park is just awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
Did you ever have any, what I would say, close calls or uncomfortable situations? I would think you have.
Too many. People have pulled out in front of me, and I've missed them by that much. They've run up behind me and almost clipped me going around. Oh, people do crazy.
You've had a guardian angel then looking over you over a lot of times, it sounds like.
I have. It's just not my time yet. If I go, I wouldn't mind it being on a motorcycle.
Does Leon share your interest, I assume, in long trips then? Or is he pretty much confined to local?
We haven't done that for a long time because his knees, he was an operating engineer and used his knees and legs to run his machinery, and he's just been incapacitated probably as far as riding the last 10 years probably. So he feels comfortable local but not out on the high. It's all balance, and when you pull up to a stop sign, you better have your feet under you, because it'll lay right over if you don't. And that's what he fears, is laying it over. Pets, I've always had pets. My first pet in Marshall was from Basil Moore's funeral home. We used to go down there and play in the casket room.
Surely not.
What fun. Yeah, Basil had a female terrier, and we got the pick of the litter because we were kind of neighbor mates when we lived on Chestnut Street. They were just kind of catty cornered. And then I started buying penny candy at Croc's grocery store. Oh dear. I had penny candy from every store that ever was, I think, here in Marshall.
I'm going to ask you, Diana, with all of that candy, you seem to have a lot of candy episodes throughout Marshall.
And donuts.
How on earth did you stay so slim?
Runs in my family. I have my mother's side of the family to thank for that. They're all tiny people. Small boned, you know how much, you can't put a lot of meat on a little tiny bone.
All the places it seemed like you visited, there's a candy handout.
I had it.
There's some good choices.
It's terrible sweet tooth. And from that first pet, from Basil Moore, I would have probably been 8 or 9. I'm skipping around in sequence, but maybe you can get this lined out. Probably the summer that we moved here, Damien, we had that first puppy from Basil. And that would have been, I'd have been 8, 9, and progressed from there. I've never been without a dog for any extended.
What was that first pet's name?
Oh, we called her Spot. She had a black eye and a black spot on her side, and she was sweet. She was one of the most favorite dogs I ever had. But I've had, I think Gloria and I counted up one time. Through the years, I've had 9 dogs, 9 different dogs. So.
And every one of them was unique and had their own personality, I think. Is that
sure,
right?
Just like you're lucky. And how lucky that dog was. I just have had one career. I've just done hair. Describe my work experiences. Oh my. When you work in a beauty shop and Yoder's Cafe being right next door, we had a window that slid up and down, and you could order while you were getting your hair done, you could order food.
Now that was here on this 500
right
block of Archer.
Well, right where Monk's.
Yeah.
And then Libby's Cafe would have been right next door to the tavern. Corner Tavern was on one side, then Libby, and then Doris's beauty shop. But everybody thought that was so nifty, you know, we could race that window. You could get coffee and sandwiches and just pie, and because Libby had homemade pies. And Bonnie Rimlinger baked them, and oh my, she was a good baker. There again, I'm getting back to my sweet tooth. I loved working in a shop and being around all the people. That was another big draw that got me into hairdressing, is I love people, and I like to be around people and meet new people, and it's just a good, positive experience. So then when the beauty shop burned the second time, the first time we worked in Barney's barber shop.
Yep.
Barney was a good host. And we found out real quick that men gossip every bit as bad or worse than the women do.
Surely not.
Those men knew everything that was going on. We worked with Barney probably 3 to 4 months before we got the shop back up and going. At that time, he was getting in poorer health, so we invited him to come down. He worked out of the front end of Doris's for probably 3 or 4 years. He was in there.
I guess I forgot that.
And she wouldn't charge him. He wouldn't charge us rental. I think we entertained him, so the rent was free. And then the second time Doris's burned, it closed because she'd gotten ill, and it was coming down to the end. So,
Diana, with that involved the beauty shop and barber shop all in one building, would you say that was kind of a forerunner of what we really see much of today?
it is. Doris was always ahead of her time.
Okay, it's so common anymore.
It is. It is. And it was not done back when she did it. It was, always separate. And a couple of the men were pretty uncomfortable coming in at first. So that's why we put him in the front part of the beauty shop, so they wouldn't. Now some of them walked right back and started talking. But they had a choice. And a lot, I'd say, there were 3 or 4 I can think of that were real uncomfortable. But men like Andy Turner just come in and sit down and, say, how's it going, girls, and what do you know? And
Did you or any of the women at that time cut men's hair?
Yes, we did. And we kind of felt bad at first because of Barney. But he could see that we were drawing the younger crowd in at the time. Would have been Mayor Bloodsworth, and back when he was, in his prime, probably 30s, 40s. He was always one that would get his hair cut at the beauty shop and not the barber shop. And along with several others, it just, Andy and Bud, they both were not intimidated by it. And the same as women, some were kind of, I think we blew a fuse.
I think so.
Some of the women were kind of, good thing. Some of the women were kind of intimidated.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Did Barney do any women's hair at that time? He didn't, I don't think, did he?
I remember him cutting Barb. No, she Daly. Mm-hmm. He used to cut Barb Daly's hair.
Really?
She wore it real short, and it seemed like none of the women would get it short enough.
Oh, man.
And she'd jump in his chair, and he'd just zip her off with his clippers, and did an excellent job. Barb always looked great to me. That was probably one of the best experiences, was getting to know Barney, because he knew everything about everybody. Except his wife, who was extorting, don't put that in. His wife was extorting money, from our various citizens.
But he had some rather colorful language usually, too.
Oh, my word. He did not mince words
I know it.
with anybody, over anything. He was quite a character. So I think, he was a major part of the beauty shop for 3 or 4 years. Then when he left, we had it all to our own, and I would say that's probably the most positive influence came from meeting Vera Bennett. We were good friends for many, many years, and of course I ran around with Chris, and I had been around Vera, but I had never really gotten to know her until the beauty shop. And that one positive experience lasted a long time in my life. And after my mother passed away at 55, she kind of became my mother image. And
your comment earlier was you enjoyed people, and that was part of the reason that brought you into the beauty shop type of business. But don't you, and you didn't say anything at all about people can also be very frustrating and very difficult.
yes.
There's both sides of it.
Working with the public well rounds your personality. And I really think Doris taught me many lessons in how to work with different people. And you were forced to do people that you really didn't want to do. Well, eventually you got on common ground. It was always initially you didn't want to do that because they were frustrating people. This was wrong, that was wrong, too short, too long, wrong color, on and on and on. She did. Doris taught me many, many lessons on how to get along with people. Zip your lip.
With that type of business, I'm sure you must have had someone say, this is not just a bad hair day, this is a bad do or whatever. Yes. I want you to fix it. Or was that ever an issue?
You know, people were generally, Damien, there was probably not over 3 or 4 in all the years that I've done hair that have been pistols. And I remember one lady griped every week about something. And I was standing behind her working on her hair, and she was complaining. And I turned that chair around and got down in her face, and I said, you know, Marge, I've tried everything I know to please you, and obviously it's not working. So I suggest that you go to another shop and find another operator. You know, she left that day, came back, she was with me till she passed away. Never once complained again. Sometimes you just have to let them know that you're not going to put up with crap. And I did, and it was all.
Well, in that particular type of business and the service thing, I'm sure you must sometimes just had to bite your tongue.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I don't know how many times I went in the bathroom and cooled down, you know, after a situation would arise. Then, about that time, I kind of took up tennis. And I remember as a child going over, and Monsignor was always so kind to us kids. The tennis court was where the new addition at St. Mary's Catholic Church sits now. But I never will forget Monsignor Donahue. He was wonderful with us children. He'd have his housekeeper bake us cookies, and he'd sit out on the back step of the, what I would call parsonage. I don't know what the correct. And we'd just gather around him and sit on the ground, and he'd talk to us.
He was very much of a humanitarian
yes.
and had a great, he was from Ireland, had an little Irish brogue, but he was just very outgoing.
Oh, yes.
And people were very important
drawn.
to him.
He had a magnetic personality that just kind of drew you in. You know, whether you were Catholic or not didn't matter. He knew no boundaries. He loved everybody. Now that was a positive experience. A negative experience was hitting the ball into the yards across the street. We got several people mad at us when we would do that. Then, the tennis court kind of ran down, and I was real sad to see that go as in conjunction with the Catholic Church, because it was monumental back in
At that time.
back in the day. We really enjoyed it.
Did you ever play at the courts down at the South School?
A few times, but it just
Wasn't the same.
the net was different, the court was different, they had lighting and all this fancier stuff, and we would have preferred just to stay at the Catholic church. Then I do remember, Damien, all of the different people that would come and go in the restaurant. As we didn't ever have enough time for lunch, we would walk next door, sit on the stools, raise the window so we could see what the customers were doing or if our next one was there. But, I remember John Snedeker, old John.
Mm-hmm.
He was in there every day. Verlin Hurst was in there every day. Bill Cook, not the young Bill, but the old Bill Cook. There were just regulars in there. Hertz had a junkyard on the corner, and from Doris's beauty shop, and they'd come in every day. Both of the Hurt brothers, and we'd talk to them and get conversations going with the regulars that were repeat, and that was an awful lot of fun because we could get some of those men going pretty good.
By design.
By design. But it's just funny that I can still see John Snedeker sitting on that stool and making everybody laugh all up and down the restaurant. That memory probably was the biggest share of my young maturing years, 20s.
Do you recall what the price of a meal would have been at that time?
Libby would run specials for $1.85. That'd be on her board. That would be like meatloaf, potatoes, green beans.
Full meal deal.
Full meal deal. She had a lot of the working farmers and builders and hungry men in there for lunch. One of the regulars was your wife's dad. Mm-hmm. He came in there, maybe not every day, but he frequently came at least three times a week. Sometimes he'd drive his little goat.
I was getting ready to ask if he ever brought his goat cart in.
Yeah, he did. One of the girls took a ride in that didn't, that was free and didn't have an appointment or was waiting on the next appointment. I remember walking to the window and looking out. Of course, Jake was such a pistol. But he took one of the hairdressers that was indoors as a ride around the courthouse square, brought her back.
And you might mention his name, too.
Oh, Jake Mealing.
And he had Jake's Jeep.
And Jake's Jeep, when he came to town, that's most generally what you would see him in. But he was in that restaurant. I remember him going back and forth with John Snedeker. They would get things going, politics or, whatever happened to be going on at the time. Just good memories. I had a very positive experience living in Marshall, and I'm grateful that I was raised in a good home with good Christian parents and had good experiences, then came back and raised my children here.
You have not mentioned anything about, you have a sister, I believe?
I have a sister.
And then you have not mentioned children.
I have two boys. Steve was born in '69. Hotter than Billy Bob. It was actually July the 4th. And Tony was born, the young son, in 70. They're 13 months apart.
What's his name?
Tony.
Tony.
Steve, and
Yeah,
Steve's
Tony.
the oldest, Tony's the youngest. Never had to worry about them. They grew up much like I did, gone on their bicycles. Neighborhood full of kids. At the time, there was Sam Spiro's, the meat cutter at IGA. His 4 kids. We had Trudeau's. I believe there's 3 or 4 of those kids. There were a lot of kids in our neighborhood, and they did. They grew up much like I did, out and gone all day. No computers, no games, no television till evening. And they would get up at the crack of dawn and eat breakfast and watch a cartoon or two. And
How about motorcycles? Did they ride the motorcycles?
you know, they started out with a little go-kart, 2-seater. They could both. And I remember they had a orange flag, a whipping back and forth, and they drive that thing. Scared me to death. They went from that to dirt bikes. They had 2 dirt bikes. Then they went to 3-wheelers. They had 2 3-wheelers, and finally we told them they could trade the 3-wheelers in for something to drive. We didn't provide them with vehicles. They had to work and pay for their own vehicles. So they gradually came up through the motor world.
You could bite your nails the whole time.
I did. We took them down to Lawrence Gravel, and of course they'd have big piles of rock, and those boys would fly up over those piles of rocks, and my heart would be in my toes. But what can you say when you do the same thing? Only you're out on the street, you can't say too much. But the boys have both said what a good childhood they had and all they got to do. And with their dad collecting cars, they were not only exposed to motorcycles, but they were exposed to the car world. And we'd go to take them to the national car shows, and they'd be all over. We've taken the kids to several different states for car shows. So they had a pretty well-rounded childhood. I'm sad that today it's all computers and you can't get the kids out much. I think that cuts down on your childhoods. So I was pretty well-rounded, and I think my boys have been.
Did you, as a youngster, have some hobbies or collections and things that you may have even brought up to date today?
You know, one thing that I always was attracted to was cookie jars. And my grandmother, on my mother's side, kind of influenced the cookie jar idea. She had an Aunt Jemima in her kitchen for years, and I was always drawn and fascinated. And when I got old enough and started kind of making my own decisions and getting an allowance, and I kind of started looking at cookie jars, and I still collect them, although I'm getting a lot pickier.
How many do you have?
I'm running out of room.
Do you know about how many you might have?
Gosh, Damien, I've probably got 50. I've probably collected about 50 cookie jars. Most of them are specialty pieces that, you know.
Do you by any chance have that Aunt Jemima cookie jar?
You know, I don't, and I've looked at them.
Never have I bought one. The price, I think, on those things
keeps going
up and up.
The last time I checked, they were $300 I saw. It was in excellent shape.
Oh,
now you can buy them cheaper with chips or, you know, whatever. Probably my favorite cookie jar is Maxine with her coffee cup. Maxine on the internet. Have you ever seen Maxine jokes?
I think so.
Well, she's there with her raggy house coat and her cup of coffee. Then I've got an animal cracker. Looks just like the little box. And it's probably my second favorite. So I'm sure when I'm done with them, somebody will probably throw them in a yard sale, and that's fine. I'll have enjoyed them.
You mentioned cars. Has that been a collection type of thing with you and your husband both?
It's been a real passion for both of us. I don't do as much as I used to do. We don't go as much as we used to, but there are still 3 or 4 events that we do in a year's time, shows that we go see. And of course that's just in the summer months too. So over the summer we do about 4 events. But we love it, and it's something we've done together. And
over the garage, I think I've seen the phrase Pontiac Acres. What's the significance of that?
We kidded each other when we built that 48 by 48 square garage, how quickly it filled up. And we needed acres and acres. We could have used acres and acres, and we kind of kidded around about it, and it evolved, Pontiac Acres, and we could still use acres. We quit when the garage got full. We pretty well had to cease.
Are most of the items in there Pontiacs?
Most are. There is an El Camino that he bought new in '72, and a pickup truck that is about probably an '85 or '6, and it had some fancier. He did drive it to work, but he took very good care of it, and just parked it when he retired. Yeah, so it's in there, but the rest are Pontiacs, and that's been, like I said, our passion together.
What was your attitude and Leon's when they quit making Pontiacs?
Oh, we were tickled to death because our cars are going up in price. I mean, we were sad, of course, but we collected the right brand, because they just keep going up and up every year. So it's been a good investment. We are sad that they quit making.
Have you put any of those in the local parades or anything? I don't recall seeing it.
We had one bad experience, and during the parade route, a kid with studs or whatever on his jeans jumped up and sailed across the trunk, and we had to have it repainted. So that, and you finally accumulate, and you get to thinking you don't really want everybody to know what you've got, because it's been known in Marshall to lose vehicles to West Terre Haute. So we kind of keep it real low key. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to maybe get into this.
No, that's okay.
With the, with your family, and you moved around, you've got a sister that you haven't told us about.
Yes, Gloria is 3 years older. She's always been my protector and has looked after me. Mom and Dad would be too busy with church meetings or whatever, and I was put in her care an awful lot. And she's given me a lot of good advice, and it was wonderful to have a sister when our parents started declining, and it would be hard to be an only child and have it yourself. So we have had a pretty close relationship forever, and it's gotten closer as we've gotten older. She taught, she does have a teaching degree, but she worked in a library in Florida for 10 years, and we made several trips down when she was librarian. She loved it, and they loved her. She's always been a good worker and dependable, and so when she retired and came back to Marshall, she started looking immediately and found a job with the Marshall Public Library. Nancy Claypool hired her, and she's been, I don't know, several years here in the Marshall Library. So we have we've made a lot of memories together, she and I, and it's been fun.
Was there a person somewhere along your career that has really changed your thinking and maybe helped you in setting your path?
You know, I would almost have to go back to Vera Bennett. She was wise, and she said a lot of things that have stuck in my mind and still come up. They still surface, the things that Vera. I'd say she was a big influence on me. Like later, like 40s, 50s. She's been gone longer than I probably realized. We did a lot of melodrama plays together under the tent up here in the courthouse, and we'd carry chairs and big boxes, and the men would be sitting there on the benches up there by the courthouse, and they'd just look, and boy, they saw us carry some props and kind of weird things. But I spent a lot of good quality time with the Bennetts. Cass as well. I mean, when Chris and I sang in a trio together, it was Mary Kay Mitchell and Chris and myself, and we practiced out at Bennett's. Cass would play for us on the piano, and so I spent a lot of time out there consequently, but like I said, I really got to know Vera later.
Did you get involved in any music of any kind?
You know, I was always more in the sports venue than music. And Mom gave me music lessons, piano lessons, but I would want to go play basketball or baseball or, you know, I've bowled for, I probably bowled for 25 years, and enjoyed every minute of it. So I would have to be more on the sports than although I love music and I sing in the church choir, I love music, but I loved sports better. That was my choice.
You mentioned church choir, and I don't think you mentioned that your dad retired from the Congregational Church, as I recall.
Yes, he did. Damien, I think he had 60 plus years of ministry in. Mm-hmm. And after Mother died, he married Irma Brown. She was Irma Brown from West Terre Haute. And she encouraged him to retire. And I was really glad that he did, because he had several good years after he retired, and loved preaching and still did funerals and weddings on request after he retired. But probably after 3 or 4 years, he quit that too. You know, he just said, I'm retired and I just don't want to do it anymore. So he had a good run at the Congregational Church. They appreciated and loved him, and
I think so, yeah.
he was just part-time, which
very well liked.
Yeah, which he loved.
Is there some event in the world that has just shaken you or really said, boy, that is just so much of an impact on my life?
I remember my grandmother telling me at her knee when she was reading the Bible, she said, there will always be wars and rumors of wars. And she said it will be religious wars. And it has really shaken me to the core that as America, we're not in control of our nation anymore. That has shaken me, that we're not in control like we used to be. It's shaken me that I've seen on email a lot of billboards that advertise Muslim meetings. And I think we're more out of control than we even realize we are. That shakes me. I feel safe living here in Marshall, Illinois, because I think we will probably be the last to suffer if there is suffering to be had.
I agree with you, but the thing is, it seems like you're really not safe anyplace anymore with the shootings and all.
No.
Small communities, small schools, and all have had targets.
Exactly.
And that's
so sad.
Disturbing.
When you feel like you're not even safe in your own nation, let alone going outside of the... I would be afraid to go abroad anymore. I just wouldn't feel safe. And we had a kind of a close call in Cancun the last trip I was there, and I kind of swore it off. And I love to travel, as you know. I've been several places and I enjoy it, but not when I feel threatened. It's not.
It's not the purpose of a trip.
No, it isn't. So I think just the world condition in general has shaken my roots, and really I have stopped to realize that we're not in Pollyanna world anymore. So I would say that.
We've all got so many new modern conveniences and things that we've just seen even in our lifetime, but is there something that you say, my gosh, that's an invention I just couldn't live without?
I'm sure every woman would say microwave. I would say a microwave. I do have a memory of, and you don't have to put this down, but I have a memory of my mom and dad and Gloria and I were in a real bad accident, and I lived with my grandparents for a year when I was 6. And Gloria lived with a family in Champaign because Dad was in the hospital about a year altogether. So I went down to the farm, that would be Newton, and Grandma would do laundry once a month, all winter long. And she had one of those agitators that you cranked, well, it wouldn't agitate. I guess she...
Ringer.
Yes. She dipped the clothes until she thought they were clean, and then and I'd stand on the other side and pull it through. Hung laundry out when my fingers felt like they were going to fall off. I never understood. She said, well, now we want to get them frozen, and then we'll bring them in by the stove. And that's what we did, and water dripped everywhere. I don't know what the theory was, but making lye soap in a big black iron kettle, I've still got a bar of lye soap.
I guess you're saying, Diana, then you really wouldn't care to go back to, quote, the good old days, huh?
Certain things I would. Certain things. I have a sadness that my boys didn't get the experience on the farm that I did. Playing in the haymow and swinging on a rope back and forth in the haymow and letting go and just where you land, you land. It was all hay, however. Calling the cows, milking the cows. Grandpa could squirt the milk right in the cat's mouth. Exactly. So I'm sad that they don't have those kind of memories. And I'm sad that the coming generations, farming's not farming like, well, the year I lived with him, Damien, Grandpa had his one tractor and plowed like 80 acres. Back then, that was a lot of acreage.
Oh my, yes.
And 20 in the bottom. The river got it every year. But in living with them, we churned butter. We slaughtered their own beef and cows and did it right in the barn. I remember stuffing the pork and the sausage in the
Sausage.
yeah. I've lived long enough. I've seen a lot of changes. Some good and some not so good.
The old saying goes, you don't want to see laws or sausage, either one, being made.
That's right.
In your travels, or even today, if you went to, let's say, someplace in Europe, and someone was talking to you about Marshall, they'd say, what's that, or where's that? What would you tell them about our town and why it might be a good place to visit?
I think of my town, Marshall, as time almost stood still. We've got a gazebo. We've got a band that plays on our courthouse square. We have a little popcorn machine where you can still buy popcorn. All the storefronts are still intact. And we have kept it progressive in some areas. We've got an interstate with anything you would want, nice motels, places to eat, inexpensive places, and Sam's Steakhouse. We've got wonderful lakes. You should come and fish if you're a fisherman, and come hunt if you're a hunter. Marshall has so much to give as a community. We gather round. If someone is in need, the whole community will gather round and provide what they can, when they can, and if they can. So it's a wonderful place to live. Yes, you worry about your children, being abducted. That wouldn't happen in Marshall, Illinois. It has happened, though. I better not say that. You don't have to worry as much about drugs and all the negative influences. We've got a good police force and good protection, and we pretty well have a safe haven here.
Sounds like you might make a good marketing campaign for our town.
That I could do.
Well, Diana, it's been a pleasure visiting with you, and I thank you so much for your generous
You've
time.
brought up a lot of memories.
And that's exactly what we wanted you to do. And this is a part of things that go down into history as our experiences. And people in the future can come back and listen to that and find out.
It'd be fun.
That was Diana Nicholson that I knew.
Remember her? She did hair forever.
So we thank you so much and really appreciate
it.
your time. It's been a delight.
I enjoyed it very much. And it did bring up a lot of good memories, things that I